long process.
Hope we don't have to do this again.
I'm hopeful for moving forward in a beautiful new school. Okay. Thank you all for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate the effort you all go through.
Thank you. Next,
I'm going to have to recuse myself. I have a conflict. My firm is involved in the design of this project, so I will go downstairs. What channel, Charlie, is this proceeding on?
Just turn the TV on. It's already on.
Is it? Okay. Just, apparently it's already on, 27, yeah.
okay.
That
I
makes
knew that.
only 4 of us here.
Next public hearing is Escuela Bilingüe Internacional Signs.
Did Kyrie announce her recusal, please? Oh.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners.
One moment. I think it just for the record, Commissioner Tan is also recused on this item.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, 10,
So we have
So,
a
continue.
bare quorum of 4 commissioners for this item.
yes.
Glad you're all here.
However,
Thank you.
I'd also like to note that Commissioner Tan may remain in the room because her residence is located within 500 feet of the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. So we have a major sign permit ahead of you tonight at the Escuela Bilingüe Internacional School. The school sits on San Pablo between 45th and 47th Street. The building itself is on the northwest corner, and the remainder of the site is used for parking and play yard. This is the site itself, with north to the top. The proposed signs are sign 1 along the corner here facing 47th and San Pablo, sign 2 on the south wall facing the play yard here, and then sign 3 is a gate sign that's proposed both at the pedestrian gate on San Pablo and the vehicle gate on 47th Street. These are photos of the existing building. As you can see, it is shown as 2 different colors. That is because this is what it used to look like, and it is in the process of being painted now. The color shown here on San Pablo is the primer color, and this southern wall is a darker blue, which will be the final color. The first proposed sign, sign 1, faces onto 47th and San Pablo. It has 3 parts. Facing 47th Street on the north wall are the letters EBI. Escuela Bilingüe Internacional is written out on San Pablo, and then the school's logo in green on the curved corner here. I'll note that the address sign that currently sits here will be relocated to this lower section here. The left sign is 28 square feet, the center is 30 square feet, and the right sign is 124 square feet, equaling 182 square feet. The first and second signs will simply be painted with no illumination. This is the second sign on the south wall facing over the play yard. It is 7 by 14 square feet or 98 square feet. And again, no illumination. Sign 3 sits on the 2 gates. This is a photo rendering of the pedestrian gate. The left sign is an EBI welcome sign, and the right sign has Living Hope's logo here. All 3 of the translations say welcome, obviously. Each sign itself is 5.5 square feet for 11 square feet for the pair, 22 for the gate sign total. Again, this is a paint. It will actually be applied to either wood or plastic, which will be installed, and there'll be a coating over it to allow for easy graffiti removal. So the total square footage proposed between all of the signage is 302 square feet. There are 4 sign-related design guidelines. They are architectural compatibility, consistency with area character, legibility and readability, and visibility. Staff feels that all 4 of these design guidelines can be met by the project. A wall sign under a minor design permit or design review permit can be a maximum of 50 square feet. Obviously, signs 1 and 2 are larger than this, therefore major design review is required. Normally, any sign larger than 50 square feet would be required to be part of a master sign program. However, EBI is currently one of 2 tenants in the building. They own the building, and within the next few years, the last tenant, Living Hope, will be leaving. So EBI would prefer not to have a master sign program. There is a caveat in the code that allows for case-by-case consideration of signs larger than these 50 square feet outside of a master sign program. And that review would come to the Planning Commission if those signs are not included in the aggregate sign area, which is the proposal here. The aggregate sign area for EBI is approximately 250 square feet. As I said, the total proposed is 302, which is why you're reviewing these signs now. The findings required to approve these signs are that the signs are necessary, no larger than needed, in compliance with the design principles of the code, compatible with the visual character of the area, readable, and will relate well to the design of the building. Again, staff feels that these findings can be made for the signs. With that, staff recommends approval of the major sign permit, subject to the conditions in your staff report. I'd like to point out that those conditions include condition 7C2, which requires further planning approval for any future addition of sign illumination. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Arlie, can you explain why EBI being the only tenant on the site is a consideration towards not wanting a master sign program?
Master sign programs are generally used for multi-tenant spaces. So the building used to have multiple tenants. The existing signage now is a multi-tenant signage program where there's slots where signs can be slid in. But generally speaking, we're not looking for a master sign program for a single site just for one tenant.
Is there an existing master sign program?
For this site?
Yeah.
I can answer that. Yes, there is. It was approved before EBI bought the building. It was when it was just a general commercial office retail building that had multiple tenants that would change periodically. There was no single like anchor tenant that was always, so the master sign program was in order to accommodate the changing needs of the changing tenants. And that sign that you may recall is on the corner of 45th and San Pablo. It's sort of silver with black letters, and it has a bunch of individual like panels on it. Each of those was that's part of the master sign program, and those panels could be changed as the tenants changed.
So under the planning regulations, what's the difference between a master sign program and what we're being asked to approve tonight?
Master sign program is meant to allow for changing tenants. Often we request that there are 2 components to a master sign program. There's overall site signage. An example is the towers out on Powell Street, where there's signage that label it as the towers, which is the site signage, and then there's individual signs that meet guidelines. So every tenant space that's going to be changing over that is allowed signage has specific square footage requirements and limitations.
I guess my question is more, if this were a master sign program, in addition to the drawings that are before us now, what are there additional materials that they would have to submit, or a document that text that went along with it, or what does that look like?
We would likely require that any space that was used as tenant signage not be proposed simply as one specific sign, but as guidelines for what any changing signage would look like. So where the gate sign says Living Hope now, there would be a description of this post is reserved for whatever tenant comes through. It's this size. We expect their sign to be this large. And it can be these materials and this illumination.
The procedures for a master sign program are that the master sign program gets approved by the Planning Commission. Then individual signs that come in over time under that master sign program are reviewed by staff administratively under the zoning compliance review procedures. And if they conform to the master sign program, we approve them, even if as individual signs without a master sign program they might have had to go to the Planning Commission. But because the Planning Commission has already approved an overall program, that allows staff to be able to approve the signs individually. in a case like this, it's fixed signage that is being proposed. It's not being proposed to change ever. So you're being asked to approve very specific signs. I think examples of, one, I think, good example of a master sign program is Bay Street.
Or
Those-
Marketplace.
Or the public market, or any of the shopping centers, really. Powell Street Plaza, East Bay Bridge, they all have master sign programs. And whenever the tenants change, you know, we get their new signs, we compare to the master sign program. If they comply, we approve them administratively. But that's not the case here, so we don't really feel a master sign program is needed.
Okay. So I understand that, but I do have some questions. I do have some additional questions. I'm not clear on exactly the applicability and the interpretation of the sections of the planning regulations that are cited in the staff report. So it says sign types not listed in whatever section, blah, 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 or signs not in conformance with the standards in the table. Okay, I get that. But then it further states, if the applicant proposes that such signs not be included in the aggregate sign area allowed by subsection B below, they shall be included in. They shall not be included in the aggregate sign area. Oh no, wait. They shall be considered by the Planning Commission. ... So, I'm just not clear on what is something included in the aggregate sign area, and is something else not included in the aggregate sign area?
So there's two things going on. The first is that the two signs, sign 1 and sign 2, are both bigger than the 50 square feet that are allowed as a minor permit. The chart that determines size and permit type for signs then goes on to say a wall sign bigger than 50 square feet should be part of a master sign program. Then we reference this section of the code that says on a case-by-case basis, we can also consider them outside of a master sign program. The section you're talking about, the aggregate sign area, is saying any sign being considered, if it doesn't fit within the aggregate sign area, needs to be considered by the Planning Commission. So the signs that they're proposing total a larger number of square feet than the aggregate sign area for this site, and therefore the consideration must go to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Does that make
so,
sense?
Yes. Can I repeat it back to you so I make sure I understand? So we're here tonight for two reasons. One, two things that need Planning Commission approval.
Yes.
One is that there are two signs that are larger than 50 square feet, and those can be considered by the Commission on a case-by-case basis, and also that the totality of the signage square foot exceeds the aggregate sign area that would be, and that requires Planning Commission approval.
Let me just embellish that slightly. The 50 square feet does not necessarily automatically trigger Planning Commission approval, because that other section that Arlie quoted says that signs that are not in conformance with the standards in the table may be considered on a case-by-case basis, i.e. more than 50 square feet, for example. If they don't exceed the aggregate sign area, they can be considered by staff. If they exceed the aggregate sign area, they must be considered by the Planning Commission. So it's the aggregate sign area is really the trigger for bringing it to the Commission.
Thanks, Charlie.
All set? Okay.
I'll just add that there was a comment letter received by staff that is on the dais before you.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Is the applicant here? Do they want to speak, or?
Good evening, Commissioners. I think if we just had gone with a shorter named school, we probably could have skipped all of this. I think Arlie's presentation, I think, covered pretty much everything. A lot of the photos and documents were supplied by the school. I am here on behalf of the school, as well as our facilities project manager, to answer any questions that you might have, but we don't
Can you
have any.
identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry, my name's John Horsch, and I serve on the Buildings and Grounds Committee at EBI.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you, then.
Okay.
Great. This is a public hearing, so I'd like to open the public comment. Please come up if you have anything to say, and you have 3 minutes each, and then please sign in afterwards or before.
Good evening. My name's Eric Gascoigne. I live at 1093 45th Street. Though we're here tonight to discuss the advertising signs that EBI is proposing, I'd like for you to know how displeased I am with the planning department, who has allowed this major private school to be built without a major design review. Who approved these colors? Best Buy blue and lime green neon. This does not belong alongside of a residential neighborhood. It's an eyesore that the surrounding residents will have to look at every day. It does not fit here for our northern entrance of Emeryville and is very obnoxious. Now for the signage, the maximum allowed square footage for their signs is only 243 square feet. EBI is requesting for a total of 302 square feet plus an additional 20 square feet if you include the existing window sign already in place on their southern exposure facing 45th Street that has not been mentioned in the plan presented. There is a total of 118 square feet of advertising proposed that is facing the residences on 45th Street that is definitely not needed. As planning commissioners, you need to look at what this school needs for their advertising signs and not let them exceed that amount in any way, shape, or form. This includes the colors surrounding the sign, as the extreme colors are now part of the total advertising scheme. In fairness, why not allow EBI signage to be the same size as what they have on their Alcatraz campus? That sign is about 4 foot by 8 foot, carved on natural wood, and is done in good taste. It makes a better fit between a commercial and residential area. This sign has done EBI very well with their enrollment continues to increase. I'd also like to note that our own planning director lives in that same Rockridge neighborhood on the same block as the Alcatraz campus. I don't believe either he or the Rockridge Neighborhood Association would allow this much heavy advertising, especially any advertising that would face residential homes such as they are proposing in my case. Another example is Pixar. Their entire signage for their property is only 150 square feet. What if they decided to put a big old Disney sign right in front of City Hall? Now, for the illumination of the property, the plan presented to you has no lighting plan, even though the lights have recently been installed on the walls of the building and 100% of the grounds have been recently lit up like a stadium. This is annoying and not needed. These lights will not only be lighting up their advertisement at night, but it'll also be lighting up the interior of our homes. So this is what I propose. Neutral, earthy colors that would be fitting for our neighborhood, lighting only enough to light the rear designated parking lot, and signage only in the size and scope to identify the school without it becoming a massive, unattractive advertising campaign.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment.
I move approval of sign.
Oh, I got another question.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead, or?
Well, I'd like to say that I don't see any reason that we need to go above 250 square feet as the aggregate sign area. If you look at page 3, and you look at the number on the corner of that building, it is quite legible, and it's also smaller. Could we put that up on the screen, actually? Is that
The existing?
possible? The page 3 and then page 4, do you have that?
Oh.
And just maybe do a flip from there to there we go. And then flipping over to the next. I don't particularly think that that is proportionally necessary, that it be that large. If you look at page 6, there is proportionally with the building, it's much better scale. So it just seems oversized, and I think if the sign just was shortened a foot The one on the corner, could you go back to it? Thank you, Arlie.
The initials or the full
The
spelling?
whole thing, if it's shortened a foot horizontally, and that would then probably shorten it a foot or two, with the width of the sign. So actually, I meant shorten it at the top and bottom a foot. You'd be right in the zone, I'm pretty sure. It's pretty darn close. So I think that would be a fine thing, and then we wouldn't, it just looks a little large, especially considering the bright colors that it's painted. It's pretty darn visible, so I think we could get a little smaller. So I would like to make a substitute motion to deny approval. But first, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I just
sorry.
have a
Commissioner
question
Motz
or
has a
two.
question.
Well, if I just procedurally here, I heard a motion to approve, but I didn't hear a
Oh,
second.
that's true, we didn't hear a second.
So
I
it's
second
not,
that motion.
excuse me?
I second the motion to approve.
Oh, okay. So you could make a substitute motion then.
Okay,
to-
but
Okay.
Commissioner Moss says something.
I'm going to ask a question of staff. It is true, is it not, that exterior paint colors alone as something that does not require a building permit is not subject to design review, is that correct?
Well, yes and no. Under our new planning regulations, building permit doesn't trigger a design review anymore.
Oh,
There are some things that are subject to building permit that don't need design review, and conversely, there are other things that don't need a building permit that are subject to design review. There isn't anything explicitly in the code that says we don't look at colors. However, it's always been our past pattern and practice to not look at colors for design review. I mean, basically to...
I want to clarify for the record that I was talking more about the contrast between the dark blue and the white. It's even more visible and obvious than the yellow and the metal. So that's what I meant by having that bright color contrast, and it just makes it more readable. So
Yeah.
And I was wondering, could the applicant come up and possibly, would you be willing to make that sign about a foot lower at the top and bottom and slightly smaller? Is that,
About a third of
So
the
that-
size.
Where the...
no, not really.
What is it, 6 feet now?
Yeah.
So you would pull it down to 4
And-
feet, is that it? The
No,
letter-
pull it down to 5 feet.
These letters are only 4 feet now.
So I will suggest that we collaborated with staff to work on this sign. It had previous iterations that we brought it to this point, getting feedback from staff and from our designers to get it to be proportional and appropriate to the scale of the building. So they were looking pretty closely at the negative space around the sign, as well as the lines of the building, and this is where we landed in terms of the best fit. It has a lot also to do with the fact that the name of our school is very long. But what is a little deceptive in my mind with this photo is that it was taken in the winter, and when those trees are leafed out, and the typical speed of traffic on San Pablo, the size we felt was pretty important for legibility, because those street trees are pretty robust, and they go along the whole facade. The one that you can't quite see that would be on the left side of this image in the median, as well as the ones that run along San Pablo.
I drove along there just yesterday, and it looked to me like you wouldn't even be able to read this sign. It's so thick.
So anyway, those were some of the considerations, the speed and the street trees.
Okay.
I suppose I should disclose this as well, but I don't know about other commissioners, but I did receive, I don't know, a couple months ago, an email from the applicant with drawings of an earlier iteration of this that did show a larger sign. So I was pleased to see that the sign that's what before us tonight has been disclosed. I did not reply to that email, so I'm not really considering it correspondence, but
I'll go ahead and share that earlier iteration.
Great. Okay.
But that one would be totally invisible because the trees cover it.
I think they've come a long way. And I, just to comment here, I think they've made a very compelling argument. The applicant has made a very compelling argument. The length of the
As a
name is
condition,
very long.
you could require them to shorten the name of the school.
Oh,
Only initials, is that it?
I have some additional comments. which are just that I asked the question about paint colors because I understand that can be a passionate issue to see bright colors or other things, and in your neighborhood elsewhere. I do feel that it's advisable to not get into the the review of paint colors, because it's a very challenging issue to be telling homeowners and business owners what colors they can and can't paint their businesses. I think it's it's sort of a passionate issue from all sides. I was pleased to see that the design of this sign had gotten considerably smaller. I do sort of share Commissioner Coomerly's or Chair Coomerly's concern that it perhaps could be slightly smaller still. So I'm not sure what we do with that. I have a couple of brief comments that are mostly directed towards the staff, but in the future it would be nice to have a calculation of the sign area on the plans rather than just in the staff report. I think it's a good thing to have in the record on the plans. And also, I found the findings actually for this approval sort of challenging, because it's sort of ironic to me. The condition, or the finding number 2, is that the proposed sign area is no larger than is necessary to adequately identify the establishment, and finding 6 is that the sign area will be readable, taking into account proportion, blah blah blah. So those 2 findings almost to me seem like they're on a collision course with each other. It's the sign shall be large enough to be readable, but no larger than is necessary to be readable. So together they're sort of like there is a perfect size, and that's what we're supposed to pick.
Well, if you look at
somehow
page number 6, you can see how they've measured the sign area. More than half of it is just the building background, because they've taken the square footage, not the actual letter size or the symbol size.
And that is traditionally how you would calculate a sign, is the smallest box that you can draw around it.
I want to add that although the trees are in leaf now, if the sign was smaller, you would be able to see it driving south on San Pablo, because it wouldn't be blocked so much by the trees. You'd probably just lose maybe the U and the E. So I'm sticking to my plan that the sign needs to be the aggregate. So.
It's 4 inches high now. You'd like to take a foot off the top and bottom and make it,
No,
I mean,
a
4
foot.
feet.
6 inches off the top and bottom.
Oh, okay, so it'd be 3 feet high.
Yep.
Rather than.
And then it would be shrink in a little.
Yeah, proportion.
And I would be willing to take off the 11 feet that the 2 the small
The gate signs?
gate signs. I mean, it's just too big.
So you're
You don't,
You're
From the
suggesting that,
calculation, so you
that
could-
the,
So that would end up being, we have to reduce it by 31 square feet instead.
well, you're saying that the signage on the building itself should not exceed 250 square feet?
Is that's
Is
my
that right?
understanding, is the aggregate total?
Well, yes, the aggregate, I believe the building frontage, which includes both 47th Street and San Pablo Avenue, is about 250 feet. 100 feet on 47th Street and 100 feet on 47th and 150 on San Pablo, which is 250 feet. And the allowed aggregate sign area is 1 square foot for every linear foot of frontage. So that's 250 square feet of signage that would be
okay.
permitted without planning commission approval, basically. So it sounds to me what you're saying is you want to reduce only the signage on the building itself to 250 square feet and not include the gate signs in that calculation. Is that correct?
Maybe I'm not misunderstanding. So basically, it's at 302 now,
Including the gate signs.
and it's 250 is the aggregate of the building signs.
That's the maximum allowed aggregate that can be approved at a staff level.
What's the aggregate now on the,
280, I believe, is the building.
oh, okay, so then no, that wouldn't, yeah, that's not what I'm saying, and I retract that then. Because if it's 280 and we go down to 250, that's,
What, can I ask a question? So what's the square footage of the gate signs?
11.
11?
11 for the pair,
11 for the pair. So
2 pairs, so 22 square feet of gate signage.
I would be supportive of...
11 each.
11 each?
Oh,
5.5 square feet here, 5.5 here, 11 when you're looking at the pair, and then there's 2 pairs, so it's 22 square feet.
Oh, 22.
Oh, I
I
thought it
didn't
was
reali-
11
I
total.
didn't realize there were 2
Which
pairs.
wouldn't make sense, okay.
Oh, I see. Here and here.
I think I would still be supportive of sort of what the staff was implying, that 250 aggregate of the building signage and then throwing in the gate signage, so that would be 272 square feet. So, we already have a motion and a substitute motion, right?
Well, I didn't hear a second to Commissioner Chair Coomerly's motion. What?
John seconded it.
John seconded the original motion.
Yeah.
So here's what I heard. I heard Commissioner, Vice Chair Cardoza make a motion to approve the application as submitted, and I heard Commissioner Sherman second that motion, and I heard Commissioner Coomerly make a substitute motion to reduce the sign area. I have not heard a second to that substitute motion.
So maybe I could make an addendum to that reduction of sign area to reduce minus the 2 gate signs, shall we call them?
Maybe,
It's the square footage of the gate.
So why don't we just say that the total of the 2 building signs would be 250 square feet?
right.
Correct. Okay, I would make that substitute motion.
And that is a reduction of how many square feet?
About 30, I think. Is that right, Arlie?
So that's about a 10% reduction.
Yes, it'd be 30 feet.
So I will second that motion, or that substitute motion.
And I would also request that it be applied to this corner sign specifically. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
Because it's
So,
the full building.
so your proposal is that this corner sign would be shrunk, the south-facing sign could remain as is, but the corner sign would be shrunk so that the total square footage of all the signs, both signs on the building would be no more than 250. Is that right?
So
The other one could shrink too, but I just don't want it all to be on one side and then this sign remain the same, because this is the sign that's too darn big, in my opinion. So, does that make sense?
It sounds like your motion would be to shrink sign 1 by 30 square feet,
Which would,
which would then bring all building signage to 250,
or
leaving the southern sign alone.
can you tell me what, I'm sorry, but
fine.
can you tell me what the 30 feet, what percentage that would be? Because that's really more to the issue.
Of that individual sign, right?
Yes.
Yes.
well, it's easy to calculate.
So how big is the sign right now, the sign 1?
182 square feet. So it'd be more than 10%.
98.
Could we just say 10% then, I think, and then maybe a little of both? Because I don't want the sign to go completely away. That's not fair.
I believe that this sign is 182 square feet, and the south-facing sign is 98 square feet.
Yes.
So if you reduce this one by 30 square feet, it would be 152 square feet. So 30, I mean, yeah, it's about 1/6. 30 of 180 is about 182 is about 1/6, or whatever that percentage
Yeah,
is.
it would be 83% the size that it was.
So a
it's-
17%
Yeah.
reduction approximately.
So procedurally here, what happens if we're deadlocked?
If you, well, if you're deadlocked, then nothing is approved, I guess.
Well, what if it was just 10% with the sign, and that was that? Taking a straw poll,
10% of this corner sign.
yeah, reduction.
10% reduction.
I'd go along with that, I guess. John, how about?
I could go along. I certainly want to approve the sign.
Yeah, all right. So, can we cancel all the previous
Well, okay, let's back up.
I will
substitute
amend mine
motions,
to
or?
reduce the corners.
Right. You're going to withdraw your substitute motion, and the seconder agrees to that, and Vice Chair Cardoza will amend his original motion.
To reduce the corner signs' total square footage by 10%.
That's okay, right?
Yes, that's fine.
The seconder of that motion agrees with that.
I agree with that.
Can I make a clarification on, do you care how that reduction is achieved?
In the same proportion that it is now?
If the sign remains the same, it would be in the proportion that it is.
Okay,
yes.
well, I mean, there are 3 elements to the sign, so potentially they could remove one element and leave the other elements the same, or are you requiring that they shrink all
No,
elements?
they need to shrink the whole sign.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is all 3 elements shrink by 10%.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, if they
Or at
removed
least just the
symbol, then
text.
They wouldn't have to have any.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
What?
whatever. Never mind.
Okay. All right. In that case, I will second that first motion. That was, is that right? Or no,
believe
John already has.
Commissioner
and
Sherman
you will-
already
Okay,
did that.
let's take the roll.
Commissioner Moss.
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cardoza.
Aye.
Chair Cormerly.
Aye.
The application, 4 ayes, the application is approved as modified by the commission, and this decision may be appealed to the city council within 15 days.
Great, thank you. I'd like to take a 5-minute